Okay, I hope that gave everyone a little bit of clarity, and thank you for sharing some of the things that you're grateful for. What I was asked to talk about today is price reductions, which you're probably thinking, price reductions in this market, that's kind of a crazy thing to talk about. But it's really not, because pricing it is probably one of the most important essential sales skills that you must have to be a successful real estate person. In this particular market, we're going crazy. We're really not seeing too many price reductions, although we're starting to see some of those sellers that are reaching for those sky high prices because they're having so many multiple offers right now in both the California and Utah markets. So we're looking a little bit at price reductions, but very, very few. But what we are looking at is a sizzling market. And in a hot market, you really don't even think about price reductions because everything's just selling off the shelf. You list it and it takes off. But they eventually come around, and what I call them are PPRs, painful price reductions. I think having a price reduction discussion with your seller is probably one of the most painful things that you can possibly do. So one of the ways to head that off at the pass is to make sure that you're a pricing expert. No one has a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen with this market. It could crash, or it could just adjust in a month or 6 months or 1 or 2 years. We just really don't know. And that's the point of it, is that you always need to be good at pricing to be ready for any kind of shift in the market. An example of that, I went through a personal situation of mine. For those of you that have been in the business for a while, I've been in it longer than I care to admit. But back in 1989, 1990, my ex-husband and I had decided that we were going to buy a new home. And at that time, for those that were in the market at that time, or you may recollect what the market was like if you weren't, that was when, especially in California, new home developments were going up like crazy. You literally had to sit in a line of cars for days at a time to get a home. And you would see every real estate agent and lender in town in that line as you were sitting there waiting for the house of your dreams. So we picked a house of our dreams. It was in an area called Oak Park, very favorable area in the Thousand Oaks, Conejo Valley area. And we put our house up for sale. We took a bridge loan, which don't hear about those now, but back then they were a hot ticket. Took out a bridge loan so that we could use the equity in our home to buy a new home. So sat in line for 3 days, got our home. It was going to close in 30 days, had our old house on the market, close the escrow, we paint the house, we're getting ready to put in the backyard. And literally overnight, if any of you remember, we hit a recession. Interest rates skyrocketed. And within a matter of a few weeks, we literally saw the values of both homes that we had at that time drop. One went down 20,000, one went down 30,000. It literally pulled the rug out from underneath of us. And we were both in real estate. Not a good place to be when you're buying a new home, have a bridge loan, and still have your old home. So at that point, we decided, okay, we're just going to have to put the new one up for sale and see what happens. Well, sure enough, that one sold within a matter of literally about 5 days. And right behind it, the old one sold. The story ended up being a good ending, having a good ending, because we ended up being homeless at that point, but buying a home in a town called Moore Park, where we ended up staying for about 17 years and raised our kids. So it was a great story, but the lesson to learn here is, even in a hot market, you have to be ready for price adjustments happening down the road, because we will have a shift. I've been in this business for a long, long time. Those of you that have been, it happens. It's cyclical. That is what our industry is like. So it's not as cyclical as it used to be. It used to be every 7 years like clockwork. It's much different now, but it will happen. We just don't know when. So in order to be prepared for that, we need to be the pricing expert. We need to understand what are the key components to pricing, and we need to be the best at doing that. And first and foremost, price it right from the very get-go. So there's 6 components that I want to go over with you that you should know well when you're talking about being a pricing expert. So if you'll take a piece of paper and a pen, we're going to start with the first one, and that is knowing how the market works. That sounds really simple, how the market works, supply and demand, right? We all know that. but it's educating your seller how the market works and you truly understanding how it works as well. Right now, we're in a seller's market. So what does that mean? That means that we have more demand than we have supply. No one has any inventory. When it's less than 6 months of inventory, we're in a seller's market. When it's 6 to 7 months of inventory, we're in a neutral market. And when we're more than 7 months, we're in a buyer's market. So right now we're in a seller's market. And how do you explain that to your seller so that they understand how the market works? Well, in this particular situation that we're in right now, it would be like explaining to them how eBay works. You take an item, you put it on eBay, you charge $1 for it, knowing that the value is $100. What ends up happening at that point? People start bidding on that particular item. They bid that item up until it gets to $200, well over what you started at and well over what the actual value is. You've used that situation to leverage power in pricing, and you've brought that price up by basically starting a frenzy, an interest in that, in our case, in that property. So that's a really good example to show to your seller how it works. If a buyer is going to look at a property, if he knows there's only 1 or 2 offers on that property, he's not so inclined to get into that situation. But in this market, when we have 10, 20, 30 offers on a property, that's exactly what we're facing right now. So the moral to that is it's better to start at or below, increase that frenzy so that you get much higher than you would if you started too high. The second one is local market conditions. So local market conditions, we know that that is talking about what's happening in our market. And I can tell you right now, if I was to walk around my office, there's very few agents that could actually tell me what is going on in our market. And what do I mean by that? Do you know how many homes are on the market right now in your area? Have you been looking at your hot sheet on a daily basis? Do you look at price reductions? Do you see if there's movement in the market? What can you tell me right now about your market? Because when you know that kind of information, when you're on a listing appointment, number one, most important, you shine above every other agent by having that kind of knowledge, because most agents can't answer those questions. And when you sit there in front of a seller and let them know what's going on in your particular market, you're really going to make an impression on them. The other thing is knowing what is going on in your particular community, in your area. In our particular area in Thousand Oaks, we have a company called Amgen, and it's a large biotech company. Some of you may have heard of it. And at Amgen, they have, have a lot of remote workers. There's a lot of empty industrial and commercial space in this area. There's a venture capital company that's come in and they want to make this kind of a little Silicon Valley area in Thousand Oaks. That's really important to what's going on in our market, because that's going to bring jobs. As a matter of fact, Amgen is going to be building apartments on their property to accommodate jobs coming in. Our Thousand Oaks is doing their general update plan for the first time in 50 years. Because every state requires, or at least California requires, that every city has so much housing available. And if they don't, they take away funding. There's a certain percentage against the population that they have to fill as it relates to housing. So that means that there's going to be more building in this area. There's going to be more apartments. There's going to be more condos in the next 10 to 20 years. When you're talking to a seller, what's important about that? Well, we're going to have some more housing down the road. Right now, you're in an opportune time to get the maximum price out of your home and move either up or down or out of state, whichever you're doing. The third one is pricing, pricing criteria. We all know how to do that, right? We use a CMA for that. We're looking and comparing properties as far as it relates to location, size, amenities, that type of thing. There's different tools that you can use for that. The Century 21 has a great free tool, Toolkit CMA, if you're not familiar with it. It brands everything to our company and it makes a great presentation. Cloud CMA is also another one that you can use. And then, of course, just using our MLS, which is what a lot of people do use. What I would say to that is that when you're doing the MLS and you're not using a tool like toolkit CMA or cloud CMA, that you make sure that you do it in such a way that it's going to be presentable to the client, and it really breaks down the things that you're finding out. And that is looking at the comparables. And then also you're going to be taking into consideration the seller's motivation and goals. Number 4 is presenting. Presenting is probably the most important part of being a pricing expert and knowing what to do when you're at a listing appointment. Because the kind of you're seeing as we talk about this, the sooner you talk about pricing, the more that you get a home priced right from the get-go is the most important thing to do. And by doing that, it's a way in the manner in which you present it to your seller. Because what you need to be doing is you need to be educating your seller at this point. You need to be setting the expectations of what they should expect from the market. Also explaining to them how that value is determined. Yes, you're determining it through a CMA, but there's other factors that are involved. One of them is an appraiser. Explaining the appraisal process. You know, it's not what you think of the property or what your neighbor might think the value of the property is. It's what an appraiser thinks, because in most cases we have a loan and that appraiser has to appraise the property. So how does that process work? Explaining to them that there are 3 sold sales that they have to pull. They have to be comparable in age and size. They have to make adjustments according to what your property has and what other properties have, and that it has to be within a close distance of the listing property. Explaining that if the property doesn't appraise, then the lender can't give the loan. So unless you have a cash deal, appraisal is going to be something you need to be concerned about. Now, in today's market, it's a little bit different. We have people waiving appraisals left and right and buyers bringing in money up to the appraisal, but we are in an unusual situation with that. It will change. There will be a shift on that. So this is something, just getting them ready right from the get-go, regardless of what we're doing right now, they still need to understand the whole process. The other thing is using a couple of graphs that we have. In our listing presentation that we have for Everest, you will see that there's 2 graphs in there. One of them is called the pricing triangle. It's a great tool to use right now, because the pricing triangle basically shows a graph to the seller that if they list at or below what the market is for their home, that they will get more buyers as a result of that. The higher they list, the less buyers they will have. And it basically is a graph that shows that. It's perfect to give them a visual. Remember, a lot of people need to have visuals. Just talking to them about what's going on in the market and showing them a one-line CMA doesn't make that impression that a cloud CMA with a tool or a toolkit CMA along with these graphs are going to help with their understanding. The second graph that we have is what's called weeks on market. Weeks on market explains to them how the exposure and pricing the home right, getting the most attraction to their property as you can in those first 1 or 2 weeks is vital in making sure that they get their home sold. So it's another great tool to show to your client and walk through. And at the end of all of that, you really should have a meeting of the minds as to what it takes to get their home sold, that they need to be at or below to get more offers, that they need to think about doing it right from the beginning rather than adjusting down the road. We have some sellers that want to feel out the market. They want to play catch up. You need to explain to them how we don't want to be chasing the market. We want to be right there where we should be from the very beginning. The 5th item, number 5, is condition. So we know price is a very vital part of selling a home, but so is condition. So making your seller understand that that property has to show great, even though it's competitively priced. If it's not showing well, then it's not going to be a good combination. It's not going to attract the buyers that they want to. We all know just by going to a brand new home and walking into an open house at a brand new development, buyers buy on emotion. They walk in, they see that home perfect. It's been decorated from top to bottom. There's no pictures. They just fall in love with that model home. They don't even think about different things that are important in their purchase because they're just so taken in by the feeling they get when they walk through that model home. So one of the things that you want to do with your seller is tell them, tomorrow after we list your home tonight, closing always, that we're going to go ahead and do a walkthrough with you. We're going to show you what you can do just to, pick things up, to neutralize things, and just make your home show the best it can, because that's really important. We have another tool for you called 21 Ways to Prepare Your Home for Sale that really walks through all the different things that you would go through with your seller, as far as from curb appeal all the way to what you can do in the kitchen, clear the counters, things like that. So those are things that you can, a tool that you can give them and walk through with them. And last but not least is communication. And communication is, from the beginning of your relationship with a client to the very end, communication in all different aspects is the absolute most important thing. But it's really important when it comes to pricing. You need to set up right from the get-go the expectation with them that you are going to be reviewing with them on a weekly basis. Pick a day, whether it's Monday, Friday. Monday's always a good day because you're after the weekend time, and that's when most of your showings are happening. So seller, what we're going to do is every Monday at 3:00, I'm going to be giving you a call. We're going to go ahead and walk through what feedback we have from the showings of your property, but we're also going to go through what's happening in the market. So not only are you going to go through what's happening in that particular tract, as far as have there been more listings, has anything sold, that type of thing, but you're also going to go through with them what's happening overall in the market. So have the days on market increased? Are we seeing price reductions? Are we seeing a lot of inventory coming on? All of those factors really have an effect on what they need to do on a weekly basis. Another tool, we have so many tools, you guys, that you all need to be using. If you don't know any of these, talk to your managers and find out about them. The other one is Golden Ruler. So Golden Ruler is a tool that is offered by Century 21 that you can set your seller up to receive a report every week or every other week, and set it up however you want. That report goes through and shows what Zillow and Realtor.com, the large internet sites, are showing as far as viewings for your home. Well, what's going to happen is if they're not having viewings, then, or they're having tons of viewings but no showings, that's a great thing for you to use as a backup to show them, look, it's not my marketing, it's the price, because we're not getting any kind of offers. We're having tons of viewings. So it's showing that I'm getting it out there and I'm getting your property exposed, but we need to make some adjustment in the price because we're just not getting any activity. Okay, so the indications for a price adjustment: you're not receiving offers, you're not having showings. The internet sites such as Zillow and that, by using Golden Ruler, are showing you that you have tons of viewings, but you're again not getting showings or offers from that. And you're noticing price drops. And it's so important that every week you are touching base with them and making those adjustments immediately if you need to. But again, I'm going back to being a pricing expert and having that home priced right from the get-go. It's going to save everybody a lot of heartache, and it's going to get that home sold much faster. I hope all of you use the ESS script book, and in that script book, there's a page, and I want to cover just a couple things that are addressed in there as it relates to pricing reductions. So what it says is, when working with a seller who is reluctant to correct their price, you must help them remember why they are selling it. As their listing agent, it is your responsibility to lead them through this process. Remember, every home can be sold if the agent and the seller do the following. The agent's job, your job, is to future pace, to set expectations. I think you've heard me all the way through this conversation. Set expectations right from the minute you sit down at that listing appointment. Get them ready for what they need to do to get their home sold when it comes to pricing. Recast a clear vision. Okay, if they're not focused where they should be, that weekly conversation, recast a clear vision, revisit their seller's motivation. So many sellers get caught up in the fact that they don't want to reduce the price. And when they maybe only have to reduce it $5,000 or $10,000, thinking about the fact that they're going to have to make that payment. The longer their house is on the market, they're making their mortgage payment, they're making their tax payment, they're paying insurance, they're paying utilities. That could add up to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So are you really gaining by leaving it at a higher price and being on the market longer? Or should we adjust the price and get you out of here and moving on to where you want to go? So revisit their seller's motivation. And 4, continually share those statistics, keep them up to date on what's going on. The seller's job is to have that home available to be shown and to make sure that that home is showable. So that you will find in your ESS script book. Knowing your price reduction scripts are also important. So be aware of what those are, practice, role play them so that you're ready and know how to handle the objections as they relate to price reductions. So the answer to handling the market and knowing the market is really being the expert. And I would ask you, after going through all of this, do you really know your market? Do you really know how many homes are for sale right now in Thousand Oaks or Moore Park or Cottonwood Heights? Do you know what the days on market are? Do you know if there's been price drops in those areas? Are you looking at your hot sheet? And if someone was to ask you right now those questions, could you answer them? Could you answer them on a listing appointment? So my challenge to you is to become the marketing and pricing expert to your area. It will not only help you get homes priced right, it will help you avoid those painful price reductions, which none of us want to go through. So price it right from the beginning, and you should get those homes sold right away without having to go through any kind of painful price reduction. All right, so let's do our closing confirmation.